My name is Rachel. I'm 30 years old, and this is the story of how the man I loved humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about, and how I destroyed him without raising my voice. Let me take you back to the day it all began. My sister's wedding. You know those fairy tale weddings? The ones with the perfect weather, soft piano music floating through a garden, everyone glowing in soft pastels, the smell of roses in the air? Yeah, it was one of those. At least on the surface. Inside, though, I was barely holding it together. The wedding had been months in the making, and I was the maid of honor. It was my little sister Chloe's dream day, and I wanted to make sure nothing went wrong. Everything from the floral arrangements to the champagne flutes had been handpicked with love. She had always looked up to me growing up, and I wanted her to remember this day forever. I was so proud of her. But I had a secret. My husband, Ethan, and I had been on rocky terms for months. He used to be the man I'd brag about, charming, ambitious, always the one who made people laugh at dinner parties. We'd been married for 5 years, and at one point, I really believed he was my soulmate. But something had shifted recently. He became distant, irritable, short-tempered. Late-night phone calls, mysterious business trips, and emotional unavailability became the norm. And when I asked what was going on, he gaslit me. You're being paranoid. You don't trust me anymore. You're always picking fights. I started questioning myself, wondering if maybe I was the problem. But deep down, I knew. I had seen a message pop up on his phone 3 weeks before the wedding. It was just a name, Dahlia. No last name, no context. Just one message that said, "Can't wait to see you again. Don't forget our weekend." When I asked him about it, he shrugged. Old friend. You're making things up. I didn't push further. I wanted to focus on Chloe's big day. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't know that he would. On the morning of the wedding, I helped Chloe into her gown. She was glowing. I fixed her train, adjusted her earrings, and told her she looked like something out of a magazine. I smiled through the pain. Ethan barely looked at me that morning. He avoided photos. Avoided eye contact. Something was off, like he was waiting for something. I told myself I was imagining it. That once the wedding was over, we'd talk. Figure things out. But I had no idea that within a few hours, he would walk up to me, in front of my family and friends, look me dead in the eyes, and slap me. If you've never been slapped by someone you love in front of a crowd, let me tell you something, it doesn't feel like pain at first. It feels like silence. A sharp, unnatural silence. 1 second, the room was filled with music and laughter, people clinking glasses, the photographer snapping pictures of Chloe and her new husband. And the next, I was standing still, one hand to my face, surrounded by people frozen in mid-conversation. And him, Ethan, just staring at me. Stone cold. Let me rewind a few minutes. It was the reception. Dinner was being served. The mood was light. I was still playing my part, fixing Chloe's hair for the photos, helping her bustle her dress, smiling at guests I barely knew. My mother called me graceful, which made me want to laugh. Because inside, I felt like I was shaking. I had caught Ethan watching me from across the room. His eyes were sharp, narrow, like he was analyzing me, waiting for me to mess up. I could feel the tension radiating off him, even from 20 feet away. I had barely spoken to him all day. He'd been distant. Cold. I assumed he was annoyed with the attention I was giving Chloe, or maybe that I'd been avoiding a confrontation. He'd had a few drinks, I could tell by the way he moved, slower and looser than usual. I stepped outside for air. The patio overlooked the garden, strung with soft fairy lights. It was peaceful, finally. But the moment I exhaled, I heard footsteps behind me. It was him. "Why are you ignoring me?" he hissed. I turned, confused. "What are you talking about? You're running around like this is your wedding." I blinked. "Ethan, it's my sister's wedding. I'm the maid of honor. Of course I'm helping her." He stepped closer. "You're flirting with every guy in the room. Do you even care I'm here?" I tried to stay calm. "You've been distant all day. I've been trying to keep the peace." And then he said it. The sentence that I'll never forget. "You know what? I'm sick of pretending you're worth my time." I opened my mouth to respond. But before I could, He slapped me. His hand struck the side of my cheek with a loud crack. The force turned my face sharply to the side. My mother gasped. Someone dropped a glass. A waiter paused mid-step. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the gravel beneath my feet, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out every sound around me. And then, he walked away. No apology. No hesitation. Like I was a fly he swatted and forgot. And worst of all, no one came to help me. They say silence can be deafening. But in that moment, it wasn't the silence that hurt. It was the lack of reaction. After Ethan slapped me, the music played on like nothing had happened. Guests slowly turned away. Some whispered. Others stared down at their plates. My own father glanced at me and looked away. My mother picked up her champagne glass with trembling hands, as if sipping would erase what she'd just seen. No one moved. No one said a word. No one asked if I was okay. And suddenly I realized I wasn't just hurt. I was alone. My cheek throbbed from the impact. I could still feel the heat where his palm landed. But the ache in my chest, the one that came from being invisible in front of people who were supposed to love me, that hurt worse. I stood there for a moment, frozen under those fairy lights. I didn't cry. Not yet. Crying would have given him power. So instead, I breathed. In. Out. In again. I walked back inside, head high, back straight. I passed Ethan laughing at the bar with my cousin, like nothing had happened. I passed my mother, who avoided my eyes. I passed Chloe, too distracted with wedding guests to notice. I went straight into the bathroom and locked the door. And that's when I finally let the tears fall. Not just for the slap. For the entire lie of my marriage. For the 6 years I spent covering for him, excusing his temper, forgiving his disappearances, laughing off his insults in public. And for the terrifying realization that I had no one on my side. You know what it feels like to be the strong one for so long that when you break, people pretend it didn't happen? That was me. They expected me to hold it together, so when I didn't, it was easier for them to look the other way. I didn't stay in the bathroom long. I fixed my makeup, brushed my hair back, pinched my cheeks to hide the redness. And then I walked out, not because I was okay, but because I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me weak. For the rest of the night, I stayed in the background. I helped clean up. I made sure Chloe's dress didn't drag on the floor. I smiled in pictures when I had to. I even posed next to Ethan in one. He wrapped his arm around me like nothing had happened. Like I was his. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Because while everyone else ignored what happened, I didn't. That night, while he slept beside me like a man who'd won, I picked up my phone, opened the folder I'd been building quietly for weeks, and stared at the screenshots. The ones of him and the woman named Dahlia. And I knew, from that moment on, I wasn't staying silent. I was going to burn everything he thought he controlled, without ever raising my voice. He thought the slap ended everything. He thought I'd crawl back into place, ashamed and obedient, too humiliated to fight back. He thought silence meant surrender. But what Ethan didn't know was that I'd already started preparing my escape. Long before the slap, I had my doubts. A gut instinct that something was wrong. It started with late-night calls he'd take in the car. Weekend conferences in cities that didn't match the calendar invites. A password change on his phone that came out of nowhere. I wasn't naive, I just didn't want to believe I was right. Until one night, I picked up his phone while he was asleep. Face ID unlocked it without a sound. And there she was. Dahlia. Flirty texts. Hotel bookings. Voice notes. Photos. Some of them disgusting. Others worse, sweet, intimate, like he was in love. They'd been seeing each other for months. He took her to dinners he never took me to. He bought her perfume and heels, while telling me we were tight on money. I took screenshots of everything. Dates. Flights. Messages. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started building a quiet case. I opened a private email. Created backups. Reached out to my friend Julia, a family lawyer with a sharp mind and a sharper bite. And my cousin Brian, who worked in IT. He helped me trace Ethan's second phone and locate even more digital footprints, including a shared Dropbox folder labeled Miami Plan. It included a lease agreement for a condo in both their names. He wasn't just cheating. He was preparing to leave me. Just not until he was ready on his terms. And until then, he was going to keep me around to maintain appearances. What he didn't know is that the slap didn't derail me, it activated me. Because that moment, that flash of pain, humiliation, and betrayal, it burned the last of my loyalty to the ground. It burned the last of my loyalty to the ground. He may have walked away like nothing happened. But I walked away knowing everything. That night, after the wedding, I didn't sleep. I lay next to him as he snored, his phone clutched under his pillow like a shield. I stared at the ceiling, counting every lie he told. Every time he said, "You're lucky I stayed." Every time he made me feel small, unworthy, replaceable. I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. He slapped me once. But what I have would hit harder and last forever. Because I wasn't going to ruin him in anger. I was going to dismantle his world one legal thread at a time. And when I was done, he'd realize that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means strategy. In the days that followed the wedding, Ethan acted like nothing had happened. He came home late, tossed his jacket on the couch, kissed me on the forehead like he hadn't slapped me in front of my mother. Like the weight of what he'd done didn't exist. He didn't apologize. He didn't mention it. He just erased it. Like he always did with things that didn't fit his version of the story. But this time, I wasn't playing along. I started moving like a shadow. Calm. Silent. Careful. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I cooked dinner. I smiled. I even laughed at his fake stories about work drama. But all the while, I was gathering bank statements, password resets, his calendar history. I found emails he forgot to delete, an invoice for a ring he bought. Not for me. Dahlia was getting a diamond. I got bruises, silence, and lies. But Ethan had no idea what I was doing. Because to him, I still looked like the perfect wife, quiet, patient, tired maybe, but forgiving. He didn't know I'd filed for divorce already. My lawyer, Julia, helped me file using a confidential address. She fast-tracked paperwork citing domestic abuse, financial manipulation, and adultery. The evidence was overwhelming, and thanks to the wedding slap being captured on video by at least 3 guests, I had visual proof of public violence. The legal system suddenly leaned in my favor. He wouldn't see it coming. And still, I waited. I waited because I wanted him to be comfortable. I wanted him relaxed, believing I'd moved on. I wanted him to laugh again. Get smug again. Maybe even take another trip with her. And that's exactly what happened. 2 weeks later, he told me, "I'm flying to Chicago next weekend. Big conference. Might stay a few days longer. You'll be okay, right?" I smiled. "Of course. Do what you need to do." He kissed my cheek, the same one he'd slapped. That night, he left his laptop open. Maybe it was arrogance. Maybe he was drunk. Either way, he forgot to close the document he'd been working on. It was a draft of a postnuptial agreement. One that essentially cut me out of every shared asset, the condo, our savings, even his business income. He had planned to present it to me after he got back from Chicago. Of course, he wasn't going to Chicago. He was flying to Miami. I had the booking details, the hotel, even the upgraded suite confirmation in his email. He was trying to end our marriage quietly, shift the finances in his favor, leave me with nothing, and start fresh with Dahlia. But while he packed his bags, I packed my own. Not with clothes, with legal firepower. By the time his flight took off, the process servers were waiting. One at his office, one at his hotel, and one at our condo just in case he tried to come back. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to let the documents speak louder than any slap ever could. When Ethan landed in Miami with Dahlia on his arm, he probably thought he was about to start the next chapter of his dream life. What he got instead was a process server waiting just outside baggage claim. He didn't recognize the man in the navy suit holding the clipboard, not until he said his name and handed over the thick white envelope. "You've been served." Inside, a divorce petition, a domestic abuse claim, an adultery file complete with photos. and a financial fraud report with documentation of how he'd tried to hide assets from me. I heard later he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He called me from the hotel that night. "What the hell is this, Rachel?" I didn't answer. He tried again the next morning. Then again the day after that. Finally, I picked up just once and said, "You slapped me in front of everyone I love. This is me returning the favor. Just more, legally." Then I hung up. From that point on, communication went through lawyers. And that's when the real collapse began. The court case lasted 4 months. 4 months of Ethan trying to paint himself as the victim. 4 months of him saying I was vindictive, emotionally unstable, and overreacting to one mistake. But you know what judges don't like? Video evidence. Especially when it shows a man slapping his wife in public, then laughing it off at a wedding reception while she stands alone with a red mark on her face. Especially when that same man is documented spending thousands on another woman while gaslighting his wife into thinking she was the problem. The court didn't just listen, they believed me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't too emotional. I was right. The verdict came in swiftly and brutally. I was awarded full ownership of our condo. I got 60% of his business equity due to proven financial manipulation. I was granted a restraining order, not because I feared him now, but because I refused to give him another opportunity to humiliate me again. And best of all, the judge ordered a public apology as part of the settlement, which would remain visible on all social platforms for no less than 1 year. He posted it with a single sentence. "I take full accountability for my actions, including abuse and infidelity, and deeply regret the harm I've caused Rachel." But of course, comments were disabled. Still, people saw. Friends, family, coworkers. The man who once strutted into every room like he owned it was now exposed. And Dahlia? She didn't stick around. She dumped him 2 weeks later, once the money dried up and the condo transfer went through. He lost everything. And I never had to raise my voice once. After the final court hearing, I stood on the courthouse steps, holding the final papers in my hand. People rushed past me, lawyers, reporters, families caught in their own chaos, but I stood still. I closed my eyes, breathed in. For the first time in years, I wasn't his wife. I was me again. I went home to what used to be our condo, now mine alone. I opened the windows, lit a candle, and stood in the silence. No tension. No snide remarks. No heavy footsteps down the hall late at night. No lies. Just me and peace. The first thing I did was gather every trace of him, the wedding album, his cologne bottle, the whiskey glass he always used, and I packed them into a box. I didn't smash it. I didn't burn it. I wasn't interested in rage anymore. I left it at the storage unit. Let the past sit where it belonged, behind a locked door I never planned to open again. Then I got to work rebuilding what he tried to break. I reopened my Etsy store. I started posting again, selling hand-poured candles and home decor. Small things, but made with care. My sister Chloe was one of the first to order from me. She never said much about what happened at the wedding. At first, I resented her silence. But later, she called and cried. Told me she'd watched the videos, and the way I just stood there, strong and still, broke her heart. She apologized for not stepping in. I told her it was okay. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for myself. I changed the locks. I repainted the bedroom. I bought new bed sheets, lavender instead of the dark gray Ethan liked. I turned what was once his office into my own creative space, filled with books and plants and soft lighting. People started following my story online after the court apology went viral. Some sent messages like, "You gave me the courage to leave my husband. I was there too. Thank you for showing what quiet strength looks like." That part hit hardest. Because when Ethan slapped me in front of my family, and they said nothing, I felt invisible. But now, I was being seen. Not for what happened to me, but for how I stood up, walked away, and rewrote my ending. One night, I lit one of my own candles, white sage and lemon, sat by the window, and scrolled past Ethan's social profile. His account was empty. Deleted. His job? Gone. His reputation? Shattered. And me? I was sitting in my favorite chair, watching the sun set over the same city that once suffocated me, now breathing easier than ever. I didn't need a man to complete me. I didn't need vengeance to heal. I just needed space to finally become who I was before he dimmed my light. They say revenge is best served cold, but mine was never about getting even. It was about taking my power back without saying a single word. It's been a year now. A full year since Ethan slapped me at my sister's wedding. Since the cameras caught it. Since the silence of the people I loved cut deeper than the impact of his hand. A year since I stopped pretending. So much has changed. But if I'm honest, the biggest shift wasn't in my surroundings. It was in me. I no longer walk on eggshells. I don't explain myself for taking up space. I don't apologize for being too much, too ambitious, too emotional, too honest. I own my space now. I expanded my Etsy store into a full-time business. Rebranded. Hired a part-time assistant. My work was even featured in a small home decor blog, and sales skyrocketed overnight. My home is filled with laughter again, not from Ethan, but from friends who stayed, who showed up when it mattered. My sister and I are closer than ever. Even my parents, after months of silence, finally sat me down and said, "We're sorry. We should have protected you." I didn't say, "I forgive you." I just said, "Thank you for finally seeing me." And that was enough. I haven't seen Ethan since the court hearing. But occasionally, I still hear things, whispers from mutual friends, a glimpse of his name on someone's post. He lost the condo. He lost the business. Dahlia's ex exposed their affair to his clients, and they pulled out in waves. Last I heard, he was living with his younger brother, trying to piece together what's left of his reputation. But I don't feel joy in that. Just peace. Because the truth is, I didn't want him ruined. I wanted me back. And I got her. There's one moment I replay in my head sometimes. The slap. That awful crack in the air. The way everyone froze. The way I froze. But now, when I see it in my mind, I also see what came next. I see the quiet strength it took to stand up. To walk away without a scene. To plan, document, file, and fight with calm precision. I didn't throw a drink in his face. I didn't scream in public. I didn't key his car. I let the truth do the damage. Now I sit in my own home, surrounded by peace I built for myself. My favorite candle flickers on the table. Sunlight pouring through windows he used to darken. And I smile. Not because I got revenge, but because I rewrote the story. My story. So if anyone ever asks what happened to the girl who was slapped at her sister's wedding, tell them. She didn't fight back with fists or fury. She just walked away and let the silence speak louder than anything else.